The Iridians roared with laughter as their armada approached the pathetic backwater called Earth. Little did those ignorant insects know the humans they mocked would unleash hell on anyone who dared threaten mankind's home. Captain Jerry Williams stood on the bridge of his flagship, the EDS Retribution, squinting at the swarm of organic Iridian ships infesting the space around Earth. The sleek alien vessels dwarfed humanity's meager defenses, bristling with cutting-edge weaponry powered by technology humans couldn't even comprehend. This implacable insectoid enemy had crushed half the galaxy beneath its chitinous heel, uniting trillions of drones behind a ruthless hive mind. Now, the bugs had come to effortlessly annex Earth, just another notch in their empire's carapace. Or so they believed. Williams clenched his jaw, his cybernetic eye glinting. Mankind's fleet was outnumbered 10-1, a ragtag militia of rusty freighters and jury-rigged warships against the greatest military force in Andromeda. Defeat seemed inevitable, but the numbers didn't tell the full story. Jerry had seen vids of the colonies already conquered by these monsters. Their enslaved populations looked more dead than alive, broken shells forced to toil endlessly for their new overlords. Some fates were worse than extinction. Humanity's only choice was to fight. Earth couldn't fall. Jerry spun to address his skeleton crew, a grizzled mix of hardened war veterans and fresh-faced recruits, the only soldiers Earth could muster on short notice. Tears glistened in some of their eyes, yet they all shared the same bleak determination as him. "Listen up," Williams barked, his voice booming. "Those Iridian fuckers think they've got this in the bag. Superior numbers, unbeatable tech. I'm sure they'll be chuckling as they glass our planet from orbit. Overconfident shitheads." Jerry slammed his titanium fist on the weapons console, making the ensigns flinch. But those insects are in for a surprise. They think they know war, but they've never faced an enemy like us. When pushed to the brink, we humans become more than just soft-bodied mammals. We transform into something primal, a force of nature itself. He grinned savagely. "The Iridians are about to learn that they should never have fucked with Earth. We'll teach them the true meaning of fear. We'll make them realize that the most dangerous game in the galaxy is pissing off the human race." As cheers erupted from the bridge crew, clashing with the blare of proximity alarms, the Iridian ships opened fire. Searing beams of plasma sliced through Earth's orbital platforms like a guillotine, the opening salvo in a battle that would decide humanity's fate. But mankind wouldn't go quietly into the night. The Retribution charged to meet the enemy head-on, the tip of a desperate spear, fighting for species survival. In that moment, every human heart beat as one. They would win this war or die trying. As the space battle raged on, the comms console on the Retribution's bridge suddenly lit up. Jerry rushed over and punched the flashing button. A panicked voice crackled through the speakers, barely audible over the sounds of explosions and screams. "This is Lunar Mining Colony Alpha. We're under attack. The Iridians are slaughtering us. They're everywhere. Please, send help." The transmission cut off abruptly with a burst of static. "Fuck!" Jerry slammed his fist against the console. He had to act fast. That colony provided vital resources for Earth's war effort. If the Iridians seized control, it would cripple their supply lines. He turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Zhang. "Zhang, you're in charge. Keep those bug bastards busy. I'm taking a strike team to the moon." Zhang snapped off a crisp salute. "Yes, sir. Give 'em hell!" Jerry sprinted off the bridge, his mind racing. He needed his best men for this mission. He activated his comm implant. "Boomer, get your ass to the hangar bay now. Bring your demo gear and a squad of commandos." "On it, boss," came the reply. Minutes later, Jerry and his team were aboard a stealth shuttle rocketing towards the moon's surface. They managed to slip past the Iridian blockade undetected, but as they approached the mining colony, Jerry's heart sank. The place was crawling with Iridian soldiers and their robotic drones. Smoke billowed from burning buildings, and the ground was littered with human corpses. "Christ," Boomer whispered, his face pale. "We're too late." "No," Jerry growled. "There might still be survivors. We're not leaving until we've saved as many as we can and blown those bugs straight to hell. The shuttle touched down on the outskirts of the colony. The moment the ramp lowered, all hell broke loose. Plasma bolts whizzed past their heads as Iridian troops opened fire. Jerry and his men charged out, guns blazing. They took cover behind wrecked vehicles and piles of rubble, returning fire with everything they had. The Iridians were damn tough bastards. Their exoskeletons could shrug off rounds that would tear a human in half, and they fought with a vicious fury, slashing with razor-sharp claws and spitting globs of acid that melted through armor like butter. But Jerry's commandos were the best of the best, and they gave as good as they got. Boomer lobbed a grenade into a cluster of bugs, blowing them to chunks. Jerry put a plasma bolt through the head of a drone, then whirled and gutted a Iridian soldier with his combat knife. They advanced through the colony, leaving a trail of insectoid corpses in their wake. As they neared the central mining facility, they heard the chatter of gunfire coming from inside. Someone was still fighting back. Jerry kicked open the door and stormed in, his team close behind. They found themselves face to face with a group of haggard-looking miners, led by a grizzled, bearded man built like a tank. "Who the fuck are you?" the man demanded, leveling his rifle at Jerry. "Captain Jerry Williams, Earth Defense Forces. We're here to help. Are you in charge?" The man lowered his gun and gave a curt nod. "Jack Wilson, mining foreman. Glad you boys showed up when you did. We've been holding these bastards off for hours, but we're running low on ammo and men." Jerry clasped Jack's shoulder. "Not anymore. My team and I are going to help you retake this colony and send the Iridians packing. What's the situation?" As Jack filled them in on the Iridians' positions and numbers, Jerry's mind was already formulating a plan. It was a long shot, but with the miners' knowledge of the facility's layout and Boomer's demo expertise, they might just have a chance. It was time to show these bugs what humans were really made of. Jerry crouched behind a pile of rubble with Boomer and Jack, studying a holographic map of the mining complex. The Iridian command center was located deep within the main processing facility, heavily fortified and crawling with bug soldiers. A frontal assault would be suicide. "We need a diversion," Jerry muttered, his mind racing. Boomer grinned and hefted his demo pack. "I've got just the thing, boss. This place is loaded with mining explosives. If we rig them in the right spots, we can bring half the complex down on those bastards' heads." Jack nodded grimly. "My boys know this place inside and out. We can guide you to the weak points in the structure." "Do it," Jerry ordered. "Once the charges are set, we'll hit them hard and fast. They won't know what the fuck hit them." As Boomer and the miners set to work rigging the explosives, Jerry gathered his commandos and the rest of the miners, arming them with whatever weapons they could scrounge. They took up positions around the processing facility, waiting for the signal. Moments later, a massive explosion rocked the complex. The ground heaved and shuddered as a chain reaction of blasts tore through the mining tunnels. Iridian soldiers poured out of the command center like angry wasps from a kicked nest, only to be met with a hail of gunfire from the waiting humans. Jerry charged forward, his rifle blazing, the miners and commandos at his side. They smashed into the Iridian lines like a human battering ram, firing and hacking with savage fury. The bugs fell back, screeching in rage and confusion. In the chaos, Jerry spotted a massive Iridian warrior barking orders to its troops. Its exoskeleton was adorned with glowing sigils, marking it as a high-ranking commander. Jerry knew that if he could take out the leader, the rest of the bugs would be thrown into disarray. He fought his way through the melee, dodging claws and plasma blasts, until he stood face to face with the Iridian commander. The alien hissed, its mandibles clicking together in challenge. Jerry recognized it from intel reports. This was Jackson, one of the Iridian's most ruthless and skilled warriors. "Come on, you ugly son of a bitch," Jerry snarled, dropping his rifle and unsheathing his combat knife. "Let's dance." Jackson lunged, its razor-sharp claws flashing. Jerry ducked and rolled, lashing out with his blade. The two warriors clashed in a whirlwind of slashing talons and gleaming steel, moving faster than the eye could follow. Jackson was stronger and quicker, but Jerry had years of close-quarters combat experience. and raw human determination on his side. He managed to score a few hits, his knife finding gaps in Jackson's exoskeleton, but the Iridian commander seemed to shrug off the wounds. It pressed its attack, driving Jerry back with relentless strikes. Jerry's back hit a wall. He was trapped with nowhere to go. Jackson loomed over him, its claws raised for a killing blow. In that instant, Jerry's gaze fell on a support beam overhead, weakened by the earlier explosions. A desperate plan formed in his mind. He hurled his knife at Jackson's head, forcing the alien to duck. In that split second of distraction, Jerry leaped up, grabbing onto the support beam. With a roar of effort, he wrenched it free from the ceiling. The entire section of the tunnel collapsed, tons of rock and debris raining down. Jerry barely managed to roll clear, but Jackson was caught beneath the avalanche. The Iridian commander vanished under a cascade of rubble, buried alive. Jerry staggered to his feet, breathing hard. Around him the battle still raged, but with their leader gone, the Iridians were falling into disarray. The humans pressed their advantage, driving the invaders back. Within minutes it was over. The surviving Iridians fled, scattering into the labyrinthine tunnels of the mining complex. The humans had retaken the colony, but at a heavy cost. Bodies of both humans and Iridians littered the ground, and the colony itself was in ruins. As Jerry regrouped with Boomer and the other survivors, Boomer clapped him on the shoulder. "Hell of a job, boss, but this ain't over yet." He held up a Iridian communications device, salvaged from one of the dead bugs. It was flashing with an incoming transmission. Boomer activated it, and a holographic image sprang to life. A swarm of Iridian ships, even larger than the one currently attacking Earth, descending towards the moon. "Shit," Jerry breathed. "The attack on the colony was just a diversion. They're going after the moon." He realized with cold certainty that if the Iridians established a foothold on the moon, they'd have a perfect staging ground for an all-out assault on Earth. The planet wouldn't stand a chance. There was only one option. They had to get to the moon first and stop the Iridians, whatever it took. Jerry turned to his team, his eyes hard with determination. "Saddle up, people. We're taking the fight to those bug bastards. We're going to the moon and we're going to blow those fuckers straight to hell." Jerry sprinted through the ruined mining colony, his strike team hot on his heels. They piled into the waiting stealth shuttle and blasted off, rocketing back towards the Retribution. "Zhang, come in," Jerry barked over the comms as they approached the ship. "The Iridians are headed for the moon. We have to stop them." "Understood, sir," Zhang replied crisply. "I'll have the fleet set course immediately." Minutes later, Jerry and his team were back aboard the Retribution, sprinting onto the bridge. Zhang snapped to attention, her face grim. "The Iridian fleet is already on the move," she reported. "They'll reach the moon in less than an hour." "Then we'll just have to beat them there," Jerry growled. He turned to Boomer and the other commandos. "Gear up and get to the hangar. We're going in." As the Earth fleet surged towards the moon, Jerry and his strike team boarded a captured Iridian shuttle, courtesy of Boomer's sticky fingers during the mining colony raid. The sleek alien craft would allow them to slip past the Iridian defenses and board the mothership undetected. The Earth fleet dropped out of hyperspace on the far side of the moon, the curved grey surface filling the viewports. Beyond, the Iridian armada loomed like a swarm of angry hornets, their organic ships bristling with weaponry. The space between the two fleets erupted into a storm of fire and plasma as the battle began. Fighters swirled and danced, missiles and laser beams crisscrossing the void. The Retribution plunged into the heart of the maelstrom, its guns blazing. Amid the chaos, Jerry's stolen shuttle darted forward, weaving between the battling capital ships. They approached the massive Iridian mothership, a monstrous vessel that dwarfed the others. Its chitin hull pulsed with sickly bioluminescence. "Hold on to your butts," Boomer called out as he keyed in the docking codes. "We're going in." The shuttle shuddered as it slipped through the mothership's force fields and into the cavernous hangar bay. Alarms blared, and Iridian soldiers swarmed towards them, plasma rifles crackling. Jerry and his team burst from the shuttle, weapons blazing. Iridian warriors fell, ichor spraying from shattered exoskeletons. But more bugs kept coming, an endless tide of chitin and claws. Then the bay doors opened, and Jerry's blood ran cold. Towering warbeasts stalked through, roaring their fury. Bulging muscles rippled beneath armored hides, and razor-tipped tails lashed the air. "Light 'em up," Jerry ordered, switching his rifle to full auto. Boomer primed a fistful of grenades and charged forward, a madman's grin splitting his bearded face. They fought through the mothership in a running battle, leaving piles of mangled insectoid corpses in their wake. Boomer split off, heading for the engineering deck to sabotage the power core. Jerry and the others fought on, planting explosives at key structural points. Suddenly a familiar figure crashed through the wall in a shower of ruptured metal. Jackson loomed over them, his exoskeleton crisscrossed with scars from their earlier fight. Fury blazed in his compound eyes. "You!" the alien roared. "I will tear you apart with my bare claws." "Bring it, Bugface," Jerry snarled, raising his fists. The two warriors lunged at each other, crashing together in a titanic clash of flesh and chitin. They traded thunderous blows as the ship self-destructed around them, explosions rocking the deck and flames gouting from ruptured bulkheads. Jerry felt ribs crack under Jackson's crushing blows, tasted blood on his lips. But he fought on with the desperate strength of a man with everything to lose. He pummeled the Iridian's exoskeleton until his knuckles were raw and bleeding, seeking the weak points he'd learned in their previous duel. The deck lurched beneath their feet, and Jerry saw his opening. He tackled Jackson, and they crashed through the weakened hull into the reactor chamber below. The world dissolved into searing heat and blinding light as they grappled on the edge of the abyss, the swirling reactor core below yawning like the mouth of hell. With a last titanic effort, Jerry heaved Jackson over the edge. The Iridian commander tumbled into the maelstrom, his screams swallowed by the roar of disintegrating atoms. Jerry staggered back from the edge, every nerve scorched and every bone aching. He keyed his comm with a shaking hand. "Boomer, I hope you're done down there, because this place is about to blow." "All set, boss," Boomer replied, his voice crackling with static. "Let's get the hell out of here." They ran, racing through the disintegrating ship as explosions chased their heels. Bulkheads buckled and decks collapsed, the mothership tearing itself apart. They barely made it back to the hangar, piling into the waiting shuttle. The stolen Iridian craft burst from the mothership's belly like a bat out of hell, engines screaming. Behind them, the dreadnought exploded in a cataclysmic fireball, debris pinwheeling through space. The shockwave caught their shuttle, sending it tumbling end over end. Jerry clung to the restraints, G-forces crushing him into his seat. The world spun and flickered, darkness eating at the edges of his vision. Then silence. The shuttle drifted in the void amid the wreckage of the Iridian fleet, its engines dead and its hull scarred by the fury of their escape. Jerry hauled himself out of his restraints, his head pounding. Around him, his battered and bleeding team members did the same. They gathered around the viewport, staring out at the carnage. The Iridian fleet was in ruins, their mothership reduced to a cloud of cooling plasma and tumbling scrap. The Earth fleet hung in space beyond, savaged but victorious. As they watched, the Retribution glided into view, its hull pitted and scarred, but its guns still proud. They'd done it. They'd stopped the Iridian invasion, shattered their fleet, and avenged the fallen. The moon was safe. Earth was safe for now. But as Jerry stared out into the silent void, he knew that this was only the beginning. The Iridians would be back, with new ships, new weapons, and new nightmares to unleash upon humanity. The war had just begun, and Jerry and his team would be on the front lines, fighting tooth and nail, paying any price, and bearing any burden to keep their people safe. They were Earthlings, and they would never stop fighting, no matter the odds. Jerry turned to his team, his eyes hard with resolve. As the Iridian mothership exploded in a cataclysmic fireball, the Earth fleet surged forward, guns blazing. The remaining Iridian ships, their command structure shattered, scattered like frightened insects before the human onslaught. Plasma beams and missiles crisscrossed the void, shattering chitin hulls and vaporizing the alien invaders. On the bridge of the Retribution, Jerry gripped the command console, his knuckles white with tension. The ship shuddered as it plowed through the debris field, its shields flaring under the impact of shattered Iridian ships. "Press the attack," he barked. "Drive them back from the moon." The Earth fleet advanced, hammering the retreating Iridians with everything they had. But even as they pushed the aliens back, the toll of the battle became clear. Gutted human ships drifted in the void, their hulls blackened and scorched. Escape pods flickered like fireflies in the darkness, filled with wounded and dying crew members. Jerry's heart clenched as he watched a crippled destroyer, its engines flaring plow-nose first into a Iridian cruiser. Both ships vanished in a blinding flash of mutual annihilation. Then came the news he'd been dreading. "Captain!" the comms officer called out, his voice choked with emotion. "It's the Dauntless, sir. They're gone." Jerry felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. "Zhang?" he asked, already knowing the answer. The comms officer shook his head. "He stayed behind, sir. Bought time for the crew to evacuate. The Dauntless, it took a full barrage meant for us. Zhang saved the Retribution." Jerry closed his eyes, grief and rage warring in his heart. Zhang had been more than just his second in command. He'd been a friend, a brother in arms, and now he was gone. Another casualty in this bloody war. But there was no time to mourn. Not yet. The Iridians were in full retreat, their ships fleeing the system like rats from a sinking ship. Jerry knew that this was their chance, perhaps their only chance, to end this war once and for all. He opened a fleet-wide channel. "This is Captain Williams to all Earth forces. The Iridians are on the run. We're going to hit them where they live. Set course for the Iridian homeworld." A chorus of acknowledgements came back, tinged with grim determination. The Earth fleet formed up battered but unbroken, and surged forward into hyperspace. They emerged in the heart of Iridian space, the alien homeworld looming before them like a bloated, chitinous nightmare. The planet was a seething mass of organic towers and pulsing hive structures, surrounded by a bristling defense grid of plasma cannons and energy shields. The Iridians had been waiting for them. A massive alien fleet, far larger than the one they just defeated, swept out to meet the humans, their ships fresh and fully armed. At their center was a monstrous dreadnought, a kilometers-long behemoth bristling with spinal cannons and graviton projectors. The Iridian Queen's flagship. Jerry felt a flicker of fear in his gut, but he pushed it aside. This was what they'd come for. This was where they'd end it, one way or another. "All ships engage the enemy," he roared. "Concentrate fire on that dreadnought." The two fleets collided like titans, the void erupting with the fury of their clash. The Retribution shuddered as it took a direct hit, alarms screaming and consoles exploding in showers of sparks. Jerry hauled himself up from the deck, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. The bridge was in chaos, filled with smoke and the cries of the wounded. "Damage report," he shouted. "Shields are down," the tactical officer yelled back. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 12, we're venting atmosphere." Another impact rocked the ship, throwing Jerry back into his command chair. Main power flickered and died, plunging the bridge into darkness. The dreadnought loomed on the view screen, its guns hammering the Retribution with relentless fury. Jerry knew in that moment that they couldn't win this fight. The Iridians were too strong, their numbers too great. The Retribution was a dying ship, and the Earth fleet was being torn apart around them. But they could still strike one last blow. They could still make the Iridians pay. "Helm!" he called out. "Set a collision course for that dreadnought. Ramming speed." The helmsman, a young ensign with fear in his eyes, nodded and punched in the commands. The Retribution lurched forward, drives screaming as it hurtled towards the Iridian flagship. Jerry keyed the ship-wide comms. "All hands, this is the captain. Abandon ship, get to the escape pods." He turned to the bridge crew, his eyes hard. "That means you too, get out of here." They hesitated, loyalty warring with the need to survive. Jerry drew his sidearm, That's an order. Move! Reluctantly they fled, leaving Jerry alone on the bridge. He watched them go, then turned back to the view screen. The dreadnought filled the display, looming closer with every second. Jerry felt a strange sense of peace descend over him. He thought of Jang, of Boomer, of all the brave men and women who'd given their lives in this war. He thought of Earth, the blue-green jewel he'd sworn to protect. He reached out and placed his hand on the control console, feeling the ship shudder around him. "All right, you bug bastards," he whispered. "Let's dance." The Retribution slammed into the dreadnought like the fist of an angry god. Its reinforced prow crumpled and shattered, but not before it punched through the dreadnought's shields and buried itself deep in the enemy ship's hull. The impact hurled Jerry from his chair, sending him crashing into a bulkhead. He felt bones break, tasted blood in his mouth. The bridge was a shattered ruin around him, open to space. But through the pain and the darkness clouding his vision, he saw the dreadnought shudder and convulse, secondary explosions rippling along its length. A massive rent had been torn in its side, venting atmosphere and bodies into the void. Jerry smiled, a rictus grin of defiance and triumph. They'd hurt the beast, crippled it, and in its death throes the Retribution would finish the job. With the last of his strength, he dragged himself to the tactical console and keyed in his command codes. The computer recognized his authority despite the damage. "Initiate self-destruct," he rasped. "Authorization Williams Jeremiah T. Captain. Countdown 60 seconds. The computer beeped acknowledgement. "Self-destruct armed, 60 seconds to detonation." Jerry closed his eyes, picturing Earth in his mind, the green hills of his childhood home, the bustling streets of the city he'd called home as an adult, the billions of lives he'd sworn to defend. "It's up to you now," he whispered. "Finish the fight. Make this count." The countdown reached 0, and the Retribution's fusion core detonated. A new sun bloomed in the heart of the Iridian fleet, a searing, blinding radiance that consumed the dreadnought and a dozen nearby ships. The shock wave slammed into the remaining Iridian ships like a physical blow, crumpling their hulls and scattering them like leaves before a storm. And on the planet below, in the heart of the Iridian hive, the Queen screamed in agony as she felt the deaths of her soldiers, the destruction of her flagship. The war was lost, the invasion thwarted. The humans had bought their victory with the blood of heroes. Across the fleet, human voices rose in a ragged cheer as they saw the Iridians break and flee. They'd won. Against all odds, against an enemy that had seemed invincible, they'd won. But the cost had been high. So many ships lost, so many lives snuffed out in the cold of space, and among them, the brightest star of all. Captain Jeremiah Williams, hero of the Earth Defense Force, had made the ultimate sacrifice. He'd given his life to save his people, to secure their future. And in doing so, he'd ensured that his name would live forever, etched in the annals of history. The war was over. The Iridians were broken, their empire shattered. But the fight was not yet done. There were worlds to reclaim, a civilization to rebuild, and always the memory of those who'd fallen to light the way. Earth would live, humanity would endure, and the sacrifice of Jerry Williams and all those who died beside him would never be forgotten. The survivors of the Earth fleet gathered in the shadow of the moon, their ships battered and scarred, their ranks thinned by the fury of the battle. They watched as the last of the Iridian ships fled into the void, trailing fire and debris. On the bridge of the EDS Titan, the fleet's new flagship, Admiral Elena Ivanova stood tall and proud, her eyes hard with the weight of command. She'd been a captain when the war began, a young officer thrust into the crucible of conflict. Now she was the leader of what remained of Earth's military might. At her side stood Boomer, his face lined with grief and exhaustion. He'd been on the Retribution when it made its final fateful run. He'd barely escaped the ship before it rammed the dreadnought, his pod blasted clear by the force of the impact. "He did it," Boomer said softly, his voice rough with emotion. "The crazy son of a bitch actually did it." Ivanova nodded, her gaze fixed on the view screen, where the wreckage of the Iridian fleet drifted in the void. He saved us all. He gave us a future. She turned to face the bridge crew, her eyes blazing with fierce determination. But this fight isn't over. The Iridians are broken, but they're not gone. They'll be back, and we have to be ready. She gestured to the planet below, the scarred and battered Earth, still healing from the wounds of the invasion. We have a world to rebuild, and a people to protect, and we'll do it the way Captain Williams would have wanted, with courage, with honor, and with the knowledge that we are the last line of defense for humanity. A chorus of agreement rose from the crew, a sound of grim determination and unbreakable will. They'd been forged in the crucible of war, tempered by loss and sacrifice. They were the survivors, the ones who'd endured against all odds. And they would not fail. Ivanova nodded, a small, fierce smile on her lips. Then let's get to work. We have a future to build. As the fleet moved out, the sun rose over the curve of the Earth, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was a new dawn, a new beginning. And though the road ahead would be long and hard, the people of Earth would walk it together, united in the memory of those who'd given everything to secure their tomorrow. On the ravaged surface of the Iridian homeworld, the remnants of the Earth fleet's ground forces fought on, locked in a desperate battle against the last of the alien defenders. They'd landed in the chaos of the space battle, dropping from orbit in a hail of fire and fury. Now they fought street by street, building by building, against a foe that refused to yield. The Iridians fought with the desperate strength of a species facing extinction, throwing themselves at the human lines in wave after suicidal wave. But the humans would not be denied. They'd come too far, lost too much, to falter now. Sergeant Jake Hammer Hawkins ducked behind the shattered remains of a Iridian hover tank, plasma bolts sizzling overhead. His armor was scorched and battered, his face streaked with sweat and grime. At his side, Private Emily Chen fired her rifle in short, controlled bursts, her eyes narrow with concentration. She'd joined the Corps just weeks before the invasion, a raw recruit thrust into the meat grinder of war. Now she was a veteran, a survivor, and she fought with the skill and determination of a seasoned soldier. "We're pushing them back," Hawkins yelled over the din of battle. "Keep the pressure on." He rose from cover, his rifle spitting fire, and led the charge. His squad followed, a ragged line of armored figures moving forward through the smoke and the chaos. They fought their way into the heart of the Iridian hive, past towering spires of chitinous biomass and pulsing organic machinery. The air was thick with the stench of death and alien pheromones, a cloying, sickly, sweet odor that clung to the back of the throat. And there in the center of it all they found the Queen. She was a monstrous thing, a bloated mass of chitin and pulsing flesh, towering over the humans like a nightmare made real. Her compound eyes glittered with malevolent intelligence, her mandibles dripping with acidic saliva. Around her, a phalanx of elite guards stood ready, their exoskeletons bristling with weapons and armor. They'd die to protect their queen, Hawkins knew. They'd fight to the last. But so would he. "Take her down," he roared, raising his rifle. "For Earth! For humanity!" The humans charged, a tide of steel and fury crashing against the Iridian lines like a wave against a breakwater. Plasma fire and explosions filled the air, the ground shaking with the fury of the clash. Hawkins fought like a man possessed, his rifle blazing, his combat knife flashing in the half-light. He saw Chen go down, a plasma bolt taking her in the chest, her armor shattering like glass. He saw others fall, friends and comrades, their lives snuffed out in an instant. But still he fought on, driven by a rage and a determination that would not be denied. And then he was face to face with the Queen herself, her massive bulk looming over him like a mountain of flesh and chitin. She lashed out with a barbed appendage, razor-sharp talons slashing through the air. Hawkins dodged, rolling beneath the blow, and came up firing. His round sparked and ricocheted off the Queen's armored hide, doing little damage. But he kept firing, pouring shot after shot into the monster. even as his rifle clicked empty and his armor warning system screamed in his ear. The Queen reared back, a screech of pain and fury tearing from her throat. Hawkins saw his chance and he took it. He primed a plasma grenade, the device humming with barely contained energy, and hurled it with all his strength. The grenade arced through the air, a glittering mote of destruction, and detonated against the Queen's head in a blinding flash of light and heat. The explosion ripped through the Queen's skull, shattering her armored carapace, and spilling her ichor in a flood of steaming, noxious fluid. She convulsed, her massive body spasming in the throes of death, and then collapsed, a mountain of lifeless flesh. Hawkins staggered back, his armor smoking, his body aching with a dozen wounds. Around him the last of the Iridian guards fell, cut down by the relentless advance of the human forces. The battle was over, the war was won. But as Hawkins looked out over the ruined landscape of the Iridian homeworld, he knew that the true cost of victory was yet to be counted. Earth had triumphed, but the scars of the war would linger long after the last shot had been fired. The dead would be mourned, the cities rebuilt, the wounded healed. And through it all, the memory of those who had fallen would endure, a shining beacon of courage and sacrifice in the face of unimaginable odds. Hawkins reached up and touched the dog tags that hung around his neck, feeling the cool metal against his skin. They were a reminder of all he had lost, and all he had fought to protect. And as he stood there amidst the smoke and the ruins, he made a silent vow. He would remember, he would honor the fallen, and he would carry on the fight no matter the cost. For Earth, for humanity, for the future. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.